So my plea to all of you is let's work together and go out there and do it.
May 22nd to 24th saw the third African Shared Values Summit 2019 happen in Nairobi, Kenya. The event focused on collaborative efforts to achieve profit with purpose.
Companies have to look at the business side, and they have to look at the social side. So in year one, we created awareness of the concept. In year two, we took it a little bit further to look for those organizations that are already working in the shared value space to come and tell their stories, because then you make it more credible and you raise the awareness of that. So when we came here this year, we realized that we here within Kenya, we still had to talk the shared value and what it is about. But we do have organizations here within Kenya that are already practicing shared value. So for us, it was about bringing those thought leaders into this room and get them to change the conversation, because that's what it's about. We have to shift business mindsets so that we can, because at the end of the day, it's about the people. Because business is about people. It's about our consumers, and it's about the people that actually work for us. So without people, we cannot survive as business, but we cannot be successful as a business if the communities in which we operate is failing. And that's where shared value comes in, because there has to be a benefit on both sides.
As you know, shared value is about looking at societal problems and then tackling them in a way that makes benefit to the society as well as to the business. So what we've done is look at Kenya, the society in which we operate in, identify problems. So for instance, if you look at health coverage, not everyone would have access to good medical care. So what did we do? We designed a project that called M-Tiba. So M-Tiba helps the poor people, or the people at the bottom of the pyramid, save for medical health care. If you look at many African countries, if one family member gets sick, all that family gets into poverty. So here we've given you a chance to save. So it's a mobile health wallet where you can save and use that money strictly for Medicare, and you can have access to facilities that have been pre-qualified, and you can get quality health care.
Business of the future must learn to co-create. It's not about competing with our partner. It's about creating a shared value that is bigger. So I am better off being a 10% market share for $1 billion business than being 100% of $10,000 business. And a lot of CEOs don't see that model. We are always fighting for the middle, for the small. So we partner with the county governments. They put in funds into this kind of a program because they can see the youth. It's the biggest challenge. Counties are being asked. In fact, the biggest challenges governors have is people send them CVs, graduates, first classes, and they have nothing to do. Now, there's no tragedy in our market where a first-class student is selling some kind of second-hand goods on the street. That skill and talent, we needed to create solutions for our country and for the economy and for the continent.
Shared value strategy is very much embedded into our strategy. It's not one where it's like CSR, where we give checks or we give one-off payments. We actually think very hard around, does this make sense for the community and the society and for our customers? Yeah. Does it address social problems? And also, can we make it financially relevant and to deliver shareholder value? So when it meets all those criteria, and then lastly, maybe, can we scale it? Because I think, especially with some of the challenges across Africa, and in particular here, some of the problems are quite significant in size. So we don't want something that is going to be just too small. I think it needs to have the propensity to move up.
A shared value company will have two sets of attributes. One set is that it aligns social and economic priorities in ways that are scalable and aligned with purpose. In the context of Safaricom, the M-Pesa product tries to make sure that the bottom of the pyramid receive access to financial services in ways that are scalable across the entire Kenyan population. For the KCB group, through their 2G Ajiri program, ensure that youth are getting jobs through training with partners like one of our sister institutions at Strathmore, the Eastlands College of Technology, in ways that solve the priorities of the country through the Big Four agenda: construction, manufacturing. A second set of attributes are that the products these companies offer are reimagined. the products are situated within a value chain. So you actually go back and find out who's involved in contributing to that product and what are different ways you can accrue value to them. And then thirdly, you must think about clusters. Are there geographies within which that particular product serves a need?
The concept of shared value, although deceptively simple, almost seems too good to be true. Solve social issues and gain a competitive edge? What's the catch?
It is possible for every single company to adopt a shared value strategy, because let's look at something quickly like employment equity. So in a lot of firms, when you look at it from an employment equity perspective, there's not a lot happening from that perspective as well. So within, and I think it was Walmart in America that really did it very well from an employment equity perspective. They unpacked it completely, looked at their employees, look at where they come from, look at their financial situations, looked at how many kids they had, how far they had to travel to work. So you unpack it completely. And then what you can do as an organization, you can create, if you have a transport problem, you can create take one of the employees, set them up to start their own little transport company and use them as one of your supply chain. So any business can do shared value. There's no excuse for not to do shared value, and there's no excuse not to align to the Sustainable Development Goals as an organization.
In Kenya, what we've been doing is introducing the concept to our customers, introducing the brand to our customers. We've been here as a business over 103 years, so they're quite entrenched with the Barclays brand. And though the ABSA brand is a big, strong, powerful brand across Africa, it's new to many, especially for our upcountry clients. So we've been introducing the brand, explaining to them the transition. We were very excited to brand the Magical Kenya Open brought to Kenya by ABSA. And that took the ABSA brand in not just across Kenya, but also across 500 million homes around the world.
If we as Strathmore think of one of our key purposes as making sure anybody who requires access to education, post-secondary, can do it through us. Right there, we are reimagining our purpose in the context of shared value. As long as we are doing things in an ethical way, we are quite interested in the Sustainable Development Goals. When we think of SDG 4 education, SDG 17 partnerships, it really allows us to get a purpose that can inform that. And then finally, we're able to do it in a way that scales. For us, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area represents an interesting opportunity for SMEs to be players on a global platform. So one of our recent partnerships announced in April this year with the International Trade Center, an entity of UNCTAD and the World Trade Organization. We are a hub for their Trade for Sustainable Development, T4SD, where really we seek to create shared value by reimagining our product learning in ways that address both an economic and social need, SMEs, and in ways that are scalable across Africa. Thinking through value chains, so how do we go back and reimagine what a cost is for somebody in Gikomba market, somebody on Metalworks, on Ngong Road, and finally in ways that work with clusters. Can we impact communities aligned with really our desire to establish leadership across Africa and around the world, but in ways that are ethical and speak to really the human purpose and the reason why we live.
This year's Africa Shared Value Summit took advantage of every moment with a masterclass and 2 full days of panel discussions, presentations, and breakout sessions involving delegates from 18 different countries and speakers from the public sector, the private sector, and nonprofit. The discussions were around the theme of Africa's business growth grounded in collaboration. But without commitments and resolutions, is it all just talk?
As a CEO, there are times you may need to put up with lower returns, not necessarily a loss, but you may have to rethink your strategy so that you're making accommodations for addressing social challenges without necessarily making a profit in that period. But over the long term, you still end up back on a path towards profitability or are profitable.
If we look towards the 2 champions that we've seen in Kenya, Bob Collymore, the CEO of Safaricom, and Joshua Igara, the CEO of KCB, even in their participation in such a summit and how vocal they have been in supporting the shared value perspective, you can see the mileage that has accrued to both companies. We're talking about KCB and Safaricom, which stand tall, as companies that have, stood the test of time into, technology advancement, seeing how they can, assist the public into doing various programs in the sponsorships they've made. Now, if you look at that as a case study into the perspective they've actually done, they've supported the shared value perspective as two leaders have come strong. I'd call them champions. Overall, there is a benefit. Might not be tangible in terms of cash, but there is a brand perspective that accrues to these companies. And I think it's what should be replicated across board, especially with the other organizations. I mean, here we're talking about, Safaricom and KCB, but there still exists many more companies, and especially the small, medium enterprises that are actually just starting to scale in Kenya and the region at large. So there is immense benefit. And again, as I repeat, it's the responsibility of government to support these organizations to ensure that they can actually live up to their billing. Even in your way of doing business, you can still manage to make profits, but still by embracing the shared value perspective.
There are some situations where we receive direct funding, bilateral funding and multilateral funding that allows us to respond very quickly, but that can only serve a small portion of the needs in a humanitarian situation. So we do need the private sector to be working alongside us, and I think it's an excellent opportunity and a new business model for the private sector in this region. We can help businesses enter, for example, refugee camps and work with refugees, or vulnerable or arid regions of Kenya or Somalia, where they can actually work with people and work with smallholder farmers. So we in some ways are like a broker, a facilitator between the needs of people on the ground and the business models for the private sector.
I think when I look at an organization like Safaricom, when they started with M-Pesa 10 years ago, even before Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer called it shared value, they started M-Pesa. And what they did with M-Pesa is that they brought change to so many people's lives because they gave them access to a financial system. So much so that today they contribute, I think it's 6.5% to the Kenyan GDP. So yes, and it hasn't been, they didn't do it in a year, they didn't do it in 2 years, they've done it over a period of 10 years. They've started making a profit before the 10 years though, but it is a long-term commitment that you have to make as a leader to actually adopt this concept.